Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to be looking at how you work out the midpoint between 2 points. So this is the first example here we're going to do. We're going to look at two easier examples and then one problem solving question at the end. So if I have the two coordinate points A and B and I'm asked to find the midpoint, what we are looking for is the point that is exactly halfway between A and B here, the midpoint. And you could potentially do this by eye sometimes. So what we're going to do is this midpoint needs to be halfway in the x-coordinates. So the x-coordinate here at A is 2. And then the x-coordinate here at B is 4. And I can see that halfway between 2 and 4 is 3. 2, 3, 4. So therefore this midpoint here must have an x-coordinate of 3. It needs to be halfway in the x-axis. It also needs to be halfway in the y-axis, so I'm looking for halfway between 6 and 10. Now, this is a little bit trickier to do. You might not immediately be able to see what's halfway between 6 and 10. If you can't, then all you need to do is take the average of the 2 points, and that will give you the halfway point. So I'm going to do 6 plus 10 divided by 2. 6 plus 10 is 16. Divide that by 2, and I have 8. So I have the y-coordinate as being 8. So look halfway between the x, halfway between the y. If halfway is not obvious, then take the mean, the average, add them and divide by 2. Now, hopefully you understood that, and I have a problem that you can now try. So if you'd like to, please pause the video, grab a pen and paper, and see if you can find the midpoint of the coordinates A and B. Okay, if you did try, then you should have an answer that looks like so. So you add together the x-coordinates, divide by 2, and you will get 4. Add together the y-coordinates, divide by 2, and you will get 7. If you didn't quite manage to get it, feel free to pause again, read over my solution. And we'll go on to a very slightly harder problem. Now, the only way this is harder is because I've introduced some negatives. What we are actually going to do is use our formula again. So we can add together the two x-coordinates and divide by 2, add the two y's and divide by 2. For the x, halfway between 3 and minus 3, you might intuitively be able to see is 0. But if you can't, it's no worries because we can just add them. And when you're adding a negative number, you're just going to subtract it. Yes, 3 plus minus 3 is the same as 3 minus 3. And then you divide that by 2. That's the x-coordinate. The y-coordinate is going to be negative 2. And then I'm adding negative 1, which is the same as subtracting 1, all divided by 2. 3 minus 3 is 0. 0 divided by 2 is still 0. And then negative 2 minus 1 is going to be negative 3. And negative 3 divided by 2 is going to be a fraction like this. I can't evenly divide negative 3 by 2. But we could write it as a decimal. So we can also write this as 0 minus 1.5. And either of these two answers is fine. This is correct. And also the bottom one is correct. This is right and this is right. Unless your exam specifically asks for a fraction or for a decimal. Okay, here is another problem for you to try with some negatives. So again, you can pause the video and have a go yourself. Okay, if you did try that, this is what your answer should look like. So we've added together the two coordinates. Remember, it's a negative number. So we end up doing minus 4, minus 1. And then you divide by 2. Again, we end up with two fractions, but no problem. You can leave it like this as minus 5 over 2 and minus a half. Or you can evaluate them into decimals, both fine. Okay, our last thing to do is look at a problem solving question. So in this kind of question, we've been given the midpoint and we have the two coordinates A and B. Well, remember, we were told that the midpoint needs to be halfway between A and B. The midpoint is going to be tucked in here. And then we want to use the fact that the midpoint is 5, negative 4 to work out what the coordinates should be here. We have a missing coordinate at A, and I have a missing coordinate here at B. Now, because the midpoint needs to be halfway between 4 and B, the midpoint needs to be in the middle here, and I can see that actually the midpoint of the x-coordinate is 5. So 5 is halfway between 4 and this B number, which I think means that B must be 6. Yes, because we've added 1 here, and then we're going to add 1 again to get to the other side. So we have B as being 6. Now, if we couldn't see that immediately, you could use a little bit of algebra. So to work out the midpoint of A and B, remember we are going to do 4 plus b, we're going to add together these two x coordinates, divide that by 2, and that is 5. And then we can simply rearrange this. So 5 times 2 is 10. So I have 4 plus b is 10. Then I'm going to subtract 4, b is 6. So you can either do it by eye or do it by rearranging. Right, let's do the y coordinates and see if we can work out what this a value must be then. So this is probably harder to do by eye. So in between, the midpoint is -4. So I've gone from 1 to -4, and then I need to do whatever that distance was again to get to a. You could work out like that, or you could do the algebra. So we have the a plus 1 divided by 2. That will work out the midpoint, and the midpoint of the y coordinates is -4. Now we need to solve this equation. So I'm going to multiply it by 2. So I have a plus 1 is -8. And then I need to subtract 1. And so a is -9. So I have this coordinate here as a as being -9. So now I've worked out the a and I've worked out the b. The final answer is a is going to be 4 minus 9. And the coordinate b is 6, 1. And if I wanted to, if I wasn't sure if I'd come to the correct answer, you could take the coordinates a and b, work out the midpoint and just check, do you get back to this 5 or -4? And that would be a good check to see if your answer is correct. I hope you found that helpful. If you did, please feel free to like the video, and it will help future students such as yourself to find this video. I've made some other videos on straight lines as well, which I will post down in the description for you. And I hope you have a great day.